talk about Western alienation and that issue, it's really Alberta and Saskatchewan that are speaking up right now. 33%, looking at the idea of separation in.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's government has tried to block any talk of separation, but the provinces are pushing back stronger than ever. The push for independence in the Western provinces is not a new thing, but it is gaining speed.
The news broke like a thunderclap across the nation. A headline so stark that people had to read it twice just to believe it. Western provinces, long restless under the shadow of federal authority, had decided to take their grievances to a level no one had imagined. Their declaration was not about leaving quietly, nor was it about waiting for approval. It was a bombshell, an ultimatum, dropped after Canada's central government issued a blunt denial of any formal exit. The country awoke to the sound of political tectonic plates shifting, and the aftershocks were immediate.
Talk about Western alienation and that issue, it's really Alberta and Saskatchewan that are speaking up right now. 33%, looking at the idea of separation in.
Across Alberta, conversations about separation are becoming more common. Town halls.
For decades, the relationship between Ottawa and the Western provinces had been fragile. Oil pipelines, natural resource royalties, taxation, and cultural divides fueled an undercurrent of resentment. Leaders in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and parts of Manitoba often spoke of autonomy, of charting their own course, only to be met with skepticism or dismissal. But this time, the tension had reached a breaking point, when the federal government flatly refused any negotiations about separation or greater autonomy.
People here to have a high quality of life, and it's only through self-determination, which can only come through separation, that we're going to achieve it.
Indigenous groups in particular have stepped in, ensuring that any process respects long-standing agreements and legal protections.
The Western premiers answered with fury. They stood before cameras, not asking politely, but announcing boldly that their provinces would act as sovereign in all but name, beginning immediately. The announcement sent shockwaves through every corner of Canada. In Calgary, crowds spilled into the streets, waving flags emblazoned with provincial crests. In Regina, farmers and truckers honked horns in long convoys, signaling their support. At the same time in Toronto and Montreal, confusion and outrage took hold. News anchors stumbled over their scripts. Political analysts scrambled for context.
The Western provinces just dropped a major bombshell, and Ottawa is feeling the pressure. They want more say over how the resources are managed, how taxes are spent, and how their communities are governed.
And government officials issued urgent calls for calm. The bombshell wasn't just symbolic, it carried the weight of a direct challenge to the very fabric of the Federation. The premiers outlined their demands with startling clarity. They would no longer remit federal carbon tax collections. They would assert sole control over natural resource revenues. They would establish their own provincial trade agreements and, in what truly shocked Ottawa, begin exploring an independent provincial defense cooperation pact. The crowd of supporters cheered with thunderous approval, but elsewhere, the declaration was seen as the first step toward a dangerous unraveling. Ottawa's response was swift and severe. Within hours, the Prime Minister addressed the nation, branding the Western premiers as reckless opportunists who threatened national unity for political gain. He insisted that no province had the authority to unilaterally withdraw or claim sovereignty. He warned that any such actions would face legal and economic consequences. Yet the firmness of his words belied the visible cracks of concern. For decades, the federal government had managed dissent through compromise and negotiation.
Alberta and its neighbors are making it clear they want more control over their own future, and they won't back down. Federal policies that many in Alberta and, Saskatchewan and other provinces feel do not reflect their needs.
But this bombshell was not a negotiation tactic. It was a gauntlet thrown. The markets reacted instantly. Investors panicked at the prospect of Canada fracturing, sending the dollar into a sharp dive. Oil prices spiked as uncertainty over control of Alberta's massive reserves sent shockwaves through global energy markets. Across the border, American officials voiced concern about stability in their northern ally, quietly preparing contingency plans should the crisis deepen. Suddenly, what had begun as a domestic dispute was now a matter of international consequence. In the Western provinces, euphoria mixed with trepidation. Some saw the announcement as a long-overdue strike for freedom, a rejection of what they viewed as decades of exploitation by the East. Others feared the consequences, worried about pensions, trade barriers, and the uncertain future of their children. Families debated at dinner tables, talk radio stations lit up with heated arguments, and coffee shops buzzed with nervous speculation. The sense of history unfolding was undeniable.
Prime Minister Mark Carney's government has tried to block any talk of separation, but the provinces are pushing back stronger than ever. Economists, politicians, and ordinary citizens are all paying attention, aware that what happens here could reshape Canada's political landscape for years to come.
The premiers doubled down, presenting themselves as guardians of regional dignity. They accused Ottawa of ignoring their contributions to the nation, while siphoning wealth and imposing policies that stifled local industries. They reminded their citizens that during years of prosperity, the West had shouldered burdens for the rest of the country, only to be treated as expendable when times turned hard. Their speeches were fiery, filled with words of betrayal and resolve. They framed their actions not as rebellion, but as justice long denied. Behind closed doors, federal ministers met in emergency sessions, trying to calculate their next move. Deploying legal challenges was certain, but the risk of escalating tensions was high. Some advisors urged dialogue, others demanded forceful assertion of authority. The possibility of financial sanctions against provincial governments was discussed, but such measures risked igniting even deeper resentment. Each option carried peril, and the clock was ticking as public opinion hardened along regional lines.
Citizens now have more ways to influence decisions that affect them. The push for independence in the Western provinces is not a new thing, but it is gaining speed. While legal and political battles are heating up fast, the West wants a stronger voice in shaping the country's future.
Media outlets worldwide picked up the story, labeling it Canada's greatest political crisis in half a century. Comparisons were drawn to separatist movements in Europe, to regions that had tried and failed to assert independence, and to others still embroiled in conflict. The spectacle of Canada, long admired for its stability, facing internal fracture, shocked observers abroad. Yet for those on the ground in the West, this was no longer about optics. It was about identity, pride, and the belief that Ottawa would never voluntarily give them what they demanded. Protests erupted in Vancouver and Winnipeg, with thousands marching under banners that read, "Our future, our choice." Meanwhile, counter-protests flared in Ontario and Quebec, denouncing the Western premiers as radicals endangering the livelihoods of millions. The national mood polarized further, echoing through families, workplaces, and political parties. Parliament became a battlefield of words, with opposition leaders accusing the government of mismanagement, while simultaneously criticizing the West for recklessness. The bombshell grew heavier with every passing hour. Reports surfaced that provincial leaders had begun informal talks with foreign governments about trade opportunities. Though quickly denied by official channels, the rumors alone sent shivers through Ottawa. Could Canada's internal divisions really open the door to outside powers gaining influence over its resource-rich West? The question lingered ominously. Then came the first act of outright defiance. Alberta announced that it would suspend federal tax remittances for energy companies operating within its borders. Instead, revenues would be redirected into a provincial fund. The declaration was both symbolic and material, a tangible step towards self-determination. Ottawa immediately declared the move illegal, threatening court action. But in Calgary, the announcement was celebrated as a victory. Crowds cheered outside government offices, chanting slogans of independence. The tension mounted and whispers of a national emergency grew louder. Military analysts noted with concern that some Western politicians had spoken of forming regional security arrangements, though no formal action had been taken. Still, the notion that Canadian unity might unravel into competing jurisdictions with separate defense postures sent a chill through security establishments. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens struggled with the practical fallout. Banking institutions hesitated on mortgages, unsure of the long-term currency stability. Farmers feared trade disruptions for their exports. Students wondered about their federal scholarships, and retirees fretted over pensions. Life continued, but beneath a heavy cloud of uncertainty. The Prime Minister attempted to rally national unity, calling for patience and dialogue, but his words rang hollow in many ears. Trust had eroded too far. For Western leaders, every denial from Ottawa felt like another confirmation of neglect. For Eastern citizens, every defiant step from the West felt like betrayal. The divide deepened, fueled by rhetoric and amplified by social media's relentless churn. And yet, beneath the political firestorm, there was a haunting recognition. Whatever came next, Canada would not return easily to what it once was. The bombshell had been dropped. Whether it exploded into full separation or simmered into uneasy compromise, the memory of this moment would endure. It was the day Western provinces refused to accept Ottawa's denial, the day they declared that unity could no longer be taken for granted. As night fell over the vast Canadian prairies, lights flickered in farmhouses and city towers alike. Families sat glued to their screens, watching as their leaders made choices that could redefine generations. The fields lay quiet under the stars, but in every home, every conversation, and every uneasy silence, the weight of history pressed down. The Federation had been tested many times before, but never like this. The West had dropped its bombshell, and the shock waves were only beginning.